Now recognize the ranking member for his opening statement.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. So the legislation before us today would amend the law so that a president or vice president, or even a former president or vice president, can remove any state civil or criminal prosecution when that case is brought, quote, for or relating to any act while in office. Okay, any act, whether it's public, private, official, unofficial, within the core functions office, within the outer perimeter, or having nothing to do with the office at all, for any act while in office, or where the state court's consideration of the claim or charge may interfere with, hinder, burden, or delay the execution of the duties of the president or vice president. In other words, every conceivable case will be removable. So look what we're talking about. And I hope my Republican friends will listen as well as the Democratic members. We're talking about destroying state criminal jurisdictional authority and power over federal officials. That's really what this bill is about, because it's saying that the president or vice president or former president or VP can never be prosecuted because, of course, it could conceivably hinder the execution of their office. Of course, it's any act, one office. So what we're talking about is, should a president or vice president ever, or former, ever be able to be charged with a state crime, including assault, rape, murder, fraud, you name it. And they're basically saying no, that has always got to go to the friendlier terrain of a federal court. So let's remind ourselves of what the genesis of all this is. On May 30th of last year, Donald Trump was convicted in New York State Court of 34 felony counts for falsifying business records to hide his hush money payments to women who he'd had an affair with. When he tried to have the case removed to federal court, the judge found that, quote, hush money payments were private, unofficial acts outside the bounds of executive authority and thus not subject to the constitutional removal requirements. It had nothing to do with his office, and the defense was not a federal defense. It was just a conventional alibi defense that you would find in the normal course of things in a state court. Trump also has charges pending against him in Georgia state court after Trump called the Georgia Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, famously asking him to just find me 11,780 votes. He was charged with election subversion and racketeering under Georgia law. He withdrew his application to remove his case to federal court after his co-defendant, our former colleague Mark Meadows, was found not to have met the quite low threshold to move his case to federal court, and that the actions outlined in the indictment were not taken as part of Meadows' role as a federal official. In other words, there was no federal defense available, making this a federal question. Last time this bill appeared at a markup, candidate Trump was just starting his campaign. He'd not yet been convicted of those 34 felony counts. His co-defendants had not pled guilty. In 2023, this was simply a bill to get the cases against him out of state court and into the federal system where Trump and his lawyers could try to shop for the judges they wanted. Today's bill looks very different because House Republicans have a new goal. They want to make sure Trump is not held to the same standards as anybody else. In essence, that he's above the law. My colleague's solution to Trump's personal legal problems, which were created by him, is not to make him all but untouchable in the American judicial system. This bill would require a federal court to dismiss any case against the president or vice president or former president or VP that becomes subject to removal, and that's any case in the state court system. The 2025 version of this bill is an autocratic Christmas tree designed to ensure that nobody in Trump's orbit, from Trump and J.D. Vance to Elon Musk and Mark Meadows, is held accountable in state court. That is completely incompatible with the idea that none of us is above the law. It's an assault on states' rights. It's an assault on federalism. It's incompatible with the Constitution, and it does not do justice to the hard-fought principle that nobody in America is above the law. I oppose this bill. I encourage my colleagues to do the same, and I will yield back to you, Mr. Chairman.